First, countries around the world have been rocked by violence from the terrorist group ISIS, as you know. But do we as Americans have a greater threat facing the U.S.? In a recent interview, Arizona Senator John McCain shifted his focus to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Watch.
I think he is the premier and most important threat, more so than ISIS. I view Vladimir Putin, who has dismembered Ukraine, a sovereign nation, who is putting pressure on the Baltics. I view the Russians as the far greatest challenges that we have.
McCain also said that in their alleged tampering with the American election, the Russians have attacked the, quote, very fundamentalness of democracy. So who is the greater threat facing the U.S. today? Who better to ask than Mr. America? Former CIA officer and president of Diligence LLC is Mike Baker. Where's your tiara?
Who better to ask? Do I get it? Do I get a tiara with that title? I mean, you would think I would.
Absolutely. I'm surprised it hasn't shown up in the mail. Amazon.
I'll check.
So, is there a mutual exclusivity between ISIS and Russia? Is there a direct comparison to be made by one being more dangerous than the other?
No. Well, no. I mean, and I understand what Senator McCain is doing. He's doing what most people up on Capitol Hill do. They try to put our threats in sort of a linear fashion, saying this is our number one threat, number two threat, and that's not the way the world works, right? So the U.S. is facing threats from a variety of different areas and potential crises, and you can't necessarily equate them all. They're not comparable.
Yeah. So,
the Russians, are they an existential threat to our democracy? No, of course not. Are they a global economic threat? No, they're not. They've got a GDP equal to a small European country. Are they a nuclear threat? No, they act like a rational player on the global stage.
Yeah.
So what are they doing? Well, they're doing what they've been doing since the Soviet Union was meddling in our politics in the early 1940s. And we know that. We know how they behave. And we know that Putin is constantly upset about the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But that's, so they are a threat in terms of cyber attacks. They're a threat in terms of sort of cyber shenanigans and economic espionage.
But you essentially know where they're coming from, and you're saying that the détente is still a factor in keeping us safe. Whereas ISIS would love to annihilate us. I mean, they hate freedom, they hate women, they hate our way of life, and they show that time and time again, especially in attacks like we just saw in Manchester. But also, you point out, we have to deal with North Korea and Iran.
Right. You've got these different threats. So what's our number one terrorist threat? Well, of course, it's Muslim extremism, and that currently takes the shape of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram and the Taliban. And so that's a big threat that we have to deal with. And then you have China, and that's a global economic issue, and also their economic espionage and their cyber activities. And the nuclear threat, well, that's Iran and North Korea and to some degree Pakistan. We have to be smart enough, and we have to treat the American people in a way that, they understand this. So it's not saying this is it. It's black and white. Yeah. Here's our number one threat. We got lots of different threats. They come at us from different directions and different concerns. We got to deal with them all.
That's true, and that's what it means to live in a postmodern world, unfortunately, is you can't demarcate every single thing. It would be wonderfully convenient if we could. It takes us to a different time, and our time is up. Thank you so much, Mike Baker.